So we just kind of went through how we can interact with a Postgres database and create tables, insert data using Python and the Pyscopg2 library. But like say like in the real world, for example, let's just do a quick scenario. So, say there's a new real estate agent that's expanding their property base or like their capabilities, and all they've been doing is storing all their data in a CSV file, like all the homes that are listed and the prices and whether or not they sold them or not, and it's all in an Excel file for them. But they're growing their business and they can no longer just manage all their listings or all of their data in just an Excel file. So they hire you as a developer and like, hey, we need this to be stored somewhere. We don't know where, but it just needs to be persistent. So somebody just can't start deleting rows off of the CSV file and compromise all the data. So they bring you in and they give you this CSV file and they say, hey, put it in a database somewhere. So let's look at, this is all in today's lectures. Where is it? Week 4. So data, let's look at raw. So here's all that data. They're going to give it to you. I'm going to create a CSV file called Sacramento real estate.csv. Touch real estate.csv. You can see over here, here's that CSV file, and I paste everything in here. And what we want to do, since last week we learned how to read and write to a CSV file, so now we can read from this CSV file, and we can clean up the data and put it into a database. So what we want to do is write a script to open up the CSV file, read from it, get rid of any data in the database or in the CSV file that we might not need, and then insert it into a database. This is what we call cleaning the data. And a lot of in computer or in data science, cleaning the data is one step of the entire data science or analysis process. You have to clean the data and then do something with that data. So here's our CSV file, and but now we list it. We have our Sacramento CSV file. Now let's touch Sacramento script.py and code Sacramento script. So we need to create a database to store all of our CSV file data in. So I'm just going to split the screen. So the first thing we need to do is create a database called, create DB Sacramento real estate. And I can just PSQL Sacramento real estate. And there's my real estate database, and I haven't created anything in there yet. Quit. But now in my script, I need to connect to the Sacramento real estate database, create some tables, open up the CSV file, manipulate the data that I get from the CSV file, and insert it into into the database. So let's look at the module again. So we need to import Pyscopg2, import Pyscopg2. We need to connect to the database. Whoa. Connection. what's the database name? State. And then we can do, what is it? Get pass dot get user. We need to import get pass up here, and we need to make this a. Does that look right? Yep. What questions do you have about what our goal is? With this. Oh. Nothing. All right. So next we need to make a cursor. Cursor.connection. Cursor.connection. At the very end, we need to commit everything and close everything. So at the very bottom, we need to commit and cursor.close and connection.close. Now in here, we'll need to do a bunch of stuff to create an actual database that represents all of this data. So if you look through here in our CSV file, we have like, street name, city, zip code, California, state, the number of beds, which looks like a number, an integer, baths, square footage, which is an integer, the type, the sale date, so we might need a date, the price, which is an integer, it looks like, latitude and longitude. So with that, we need to create a database or create a table of everything. Instead of just using a basic variable, I'm going to create a method to create this table. So I can do def table creation query, and when executed, it's going to return this table. So I can do raw SQL create table. Let's call the table properties. And inside here, we'll do ID, serial, primary key, street, address, use a varchar. Let's do 255. See up here, it says street, but I don't want, like, street isn't that descriptive. I'm going to do street address because that's what actually it is. As you can see right here, it's like the street address. I can do city, is a varchar. Let's do like 20 or like 100. Zip code. The zip code, let's make zip code a string because they can. Let's make it 10. And then I can bring in everything else. I do state. State is a varchar. Do like 20. I do number of beds right here. So number of beds, it's going to be an integer. Number of baths. What should number of baths be?
Float.
A float?
Decimal.
Decimal. So the number, because you can have like 2.5 baths. So it should be a decimal, or also known as like a float from a Python. Square feet, integer, property, type, varchar, 200, sale date equals, what should the sale date be? Date in Postgres. date. So it looks like we have date. We can do a timestamp or just the date. Let's just do the date. All right. Date, sale price, just integer, latitude is a decimal, and longitude is a decimal. At the very end, I need to close out that query. All right. So that's a method that just returns the query to create a database or create a table. So next, let's execute this and just see what it looks like. Cursor.execute, table creation query, and invoke it. And let's see if that works. So if I Python Sacramento, so script, connections, oops. Run that again. Okay, so it did already create the table, the database, and the table. So here I just want to create another, let's call it like drop table equals drop, what is it? Drop table if exists, properties, cascade. And then drop table. If that works, cool, nothing bad happened. I can check the database, whether it existed. Yep, properties. And there's all the database properties. What questions do you have so far about creating the table this way? So I'm literally just kind of matching up the headers to whatever I want. And it doesn't always have to match up. Maybe there might be a column in here that I don't want to add, then I don't need to actually create it. So say like latitude and longitude, I don't really care about. I don't necessarily need to add it to my database if I don't want to. Any questions? So now we dropped the table, we created the table. Now we actually have to get access to the CSV file. Does anybody remember how to open up a CSV file and read it from it?
With open? So
with open, and then the location of this file. So right now I'm just literally until real estate.csv. Is that how it worked? So I'm opening from it. So with open as real, let's just do CSV file.
I think it's Sacramento_RE. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, you're 100% right. Real estate. All right. So how do I want to read from this? So CSV reader equals CSV dot. I'm going to make it a dict reader because I want to match up the columns, the headers to whatever that value is. So CSV file. And now I can do for row in CSV reader. I'm just going to print the row. Print row. So if I execute this, it's going to run through this, drop the table if it exists, create the table, and then open up the CSV file and print all the rows.
Tom, I think you got to import CSV.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I need to import CSV. Cool. See if this works. There we go. So it looks like I'm importing everything. Now, what do I need to do? Now, it might be, how does everything, when you're importing values from a CSV file, how are they imported? What data type are they? I'm sorry?
As a string?
They come in as a string. So if I import, you know, the number of beds as and it comes in as a string, but I need to import it into my database as an integer or a decimal or a date, I need to change all that. So I need to essentially change the data type of everything that comes in if it needs to be changed. What's the best way how should I do that? Does anybody have any ideas?
I think with the CSV library, you can designate headers, and maybe if we designated headers, if we can designate headers, maybe we can designate data types for each header. Just an idea. I haven't done it before, but
oh yeah,
it seems possible with when you create a headers field in the CSV library.
So you can designate a data type for the header?
I don't know if you can do that, but I know you can designate headers for sure.
Yeah. So we have the headers, definitely. But we can't designate the data type per the value in the header. So we're going to have to manually do that via Python. So I'm printing each row here. Maybe if I pass this row into another method and I have access to all the values in the row, I can extract each like zip code, the state, and change the value of that and assign it to like another object and return that object. And when I return that object, I can insert, when I execute that SQL query, I can extract each value in the object and place it in the correct column in my database. So if I were to do that, I can say like create a new method just called def clean data that takes in a CSV row, and let's just print it. Print CSV row. So now I'm printing, instead of just printing each individual row here, I can run clean data and pass in the row. And what should show up? Pretty much exactly same thing should show up. So again, just passed in that dictionary, this ordered dict, into this clean data row, and now it's printing that row. So now I'm going to create an object like return cleaned object. Actually, just return cleaned. Return clean. So now I need to create an empty object. And before I do that, I just want to make sure I can print the CSV row and like the element. I just want to print Sacramento. Let's just print the prices of each value, just to make sure I can still have access to that. So cool. I'm printing all of the prices. And how do I do type? The type. Okay, they're just making sure that they are in fact a string. So the sale price, do I even have the price in here? Sale price is an integer. So it's a string, but I need to return it, make it into an integer. So I can say cleaned, and then I can add in essentially all of these, like street address, street address equals CSV row dot street, because it corresponds to the street. And now I can do street. I'm going to copy all this. I wish there's an easier way I can manipulate all this at once. Nope. Okay, so I can do cleaned equals CSV row. What is that? The city. So that's the same. Cleaned zip code equals CSV row. And this is zip. And essentially going all the way down, I can do cleaned state equals CSV row. What is it? State. So that's the same. And delete all that. Oh, shit, nikes. Delete. Ah, dang it. Delete those. Delete that. Delete that. Decimal. Okay. So you can cleaned. Oh. I'm just going to make all these clean things first. So I'm adding on these keys to this empty cleaned object. So cleaned. Sale is a date. Trying to find a faster way to do this. That should have been it. So now for the number of beds, it's CSV row, is it beds? But beds is number of beds is an integer. So how can I change this value to an integer in Python?
Wrap it in an int with parentheses.
All right, so int. Likewise with number of beds, CSV or baths, CSV row, baths. So baths is a decimal.
I looked through the CSV file. I didn't find any decimals for baths. They all look like integers.
Right, but in the future there might be like 1.5 baths or at some point.
Yeah.
So
Just wrap it in float.
I'm sorry?
Just wrap it in a float.
In a float? Does Python have a float?
Yes.
Python float. All right, we can check that out. So I could say float. All right, square feet. What is square feet?
You might want to round that float too, because sometimes Python adds a lot of zeros to the end of it.
All right, so Python round float. All right. So round float. Okay. So it would be like round, float to like so, or something like that. Except round is
Yeah.
round. Okay. So square footage.
Those baths need to be in square brackets.
Baths. Yes, they do. Is it? I'm trying to. All right. Integer, CSV row, and square feet. Square dunder square feet. Property type. Doesn't look like I need, it's a string. So I can just say type. Sale date. Date. How do I convert something to a date? Can I just do I even need to? Because is this already a date? Let's try it out. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure. I thought the date format took years with 4 digits.
Years of 4 digits. Date and Postgres. So it looks like the date needs to be year, month, and day. Interesting. But in here, it's month or month, day, and year. Let's do a timestamp. A million different ways.
My partner and I found yesterday that we actually were able to switch the year, month, and date to like standard format as opposed to like the format there, and it was still working for our subtractions and age calculations too.
Interesting. But that's when the database is already in. Everything's already in the database as required.
True.
Can always try it out, see what happens. Let's just do sale date. I have a feeling that's going to break. Sale price, integer, CSV row. What is it? Sale price. And then here is a decimal. What do we want to round this to? 5, 6? So round float to 6 decimal points. Instead of baths, we can say latitude, longitude. Now, at the very end, it returns that object. So if we clean the data, let's print it and see what that looks like. Uh-oh. What does it say? Bed, is it beds? There we go. All right, clear it. Okay, cool. Everything looks right, doesn't it? I'm wondering about the sale date, but we can go ahead and try it. So it returns an object. So now what can we do? For each row, we have all the necessary data that we want to insert into the database. Now what do we want to do?
Can you use the quargs in this?
What would I be using the quargs for and where? So
What-
So
to
I
insert into it? I'm not sure.
to insert into the database,
Yes.
I don't think we can use quargs. We can look at Pyscopg2, quargs, star, args, quargs. I don't think we can. So for each row, we clean the data, we return an object like so. Now we need to actually insert that into our database. So I'm going to say cleaned data equals clean row. So this clean data is now an object. So I can print the cleaned data. If I print everything out, it prints everything out. But now I want to execute everything into that database. So again, we can do cursor.execute. And now the execute method takes in two parameters, the query, so insert into properties, start with, street address. Where am I at? Oh, I see what's going on here. So street address, city, zip code. If I just copy and paste everything, city, street, zip code. So city or street, address, city, zip code, state, number of beds, number of baths, square feet, property type, sale date. Now I need to insert the values. And again, for each value that I insert, I need that %s. %s, period. How many values do I need to insert? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So total 12, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So those are our placeholders. And now I need to actually type in the actual values. So I need to access the clean data. So cleaned data. Now I got to do the street address, followed by cleaned data, followed by the city, cleaned data, followed by the zip code, cleaned data, followed by the state, clean data, number of beds. Is it cleaned data, number of baths? So it's kind of cumbersome. Cleaned data, what is it? Square feet. But it's a lot faster than to manually input every single thing in here. Now this file is pretty small. It's only 20 lines long, but imagine if you had a file that, is, I'm looking at a file that's like 500 or 1,000 lines long. Cleaned data. Is it square feet? Property type. Cleaned data. Sale date. See if everything is working. Cleaned data. Price. We're almost there. data longitude, clean data latitude. All right. Does that look okay?
There is a mistake on clean data sale price. It has a D.
Sale price. Thank you. So if we did everything correctly and we cleaned our data correctly, which we'll see whether or not we did or not, we'll be successfully able to insert everything in our database. So if I clear everything and I run this script, hopefully everything works. No. So it says line 54, cursor key air sale price, integer CSV row. So I've got sale date and sale price.
I think I see a space after sale price, line 41.
Line 41, right there. All right, let's try that out. All right, nothing bad happened. Let's clear it. Now let's actually PSQL into our Sacramento, is it real estate? And now we can select star from properties. And there we go. You can see everything is actually in there now. And did it extended display on? Now it looks pretty. So if you want to know extended display, it's \X. So it prints things out a little bit cleaner versus something like this. So it's for X. There we go. Does anybody have any questions? So after I did that I committed everything and I closed the connection.
Could we
It's on
see?
the %s. Is that just so that's a special way to do it for this library? You wouldn't use an F string there because the SQL injection or what?
Correct. Yeah. So the Pyscopg2 library explicitly says, hey, the first element that you pass in, the first argument is a string or is a SQL string. And these values right here need a %s. You can't do string interpolation for it. And then the second argument is a tuple with all the actual data. So the street address will go in the very first element right here. The city will go right there. That's how it works. So quick review. I created a variable drop table if exists. I created a method that creates the table with raw SQL query. It creates the table. I created a clean data method that when I open up the CSV file, I open up as a dict reader. I loop through each row, pass each row into the clean data method. Comes up here. Each row is passed into here. I create an empty object, and I add the street address, which corresponds to all the columns or all the fields in my database. And I put the actual value from that CSV row and assign it to that key. And I clean it, make sure it's all the right data type for my database, like integers, decimals, etc., dates, whether if it's a float or round. and then I return that object. So right here, I'm returning that object. I'm assigning that object to a final clean data method or a variable. And now I'm actually executing and inserting all those values into the database through this execute method. And I'm just extracting the newly clean data fields from the clean data object. And I'm inserting them all. And then I'm committing everything. So saving everything to the database. I'm closing the cursor and closing the connection. What questions do you have?
Sorry, Tom, I have 2 quick questions.
Yep.
First one is, would we want to add a primary key into this while we're creating this table?
No, because I already created a primary key up here.
Oh, okay, I see that
Yep.
now. And the second one is, did it automatically convert the date to the 4-digit year?
It looks like it did.
Okay.
Which is really nice. Yep.
Can you go back up to the top, please? Okay, thank you.